This little guy had been abandoned. Maybe because his owners didn't feel a connection to him, because they didn't know his story, or because they thought the damage he had suffered couldn't be repaired. Luckily, I found him. He was set aside at my local recycling station, free to take. It's a simple drawing, done in red chalk. It may not look like much at first glance, but upon closer inspection, you can see that it's a drawing with a unique expression, one that could be a real treasure. But it needs help if it's not to be lost forever. In order to properly examine the drawing, it first needs to be taken out of the frame. The frame is taped all the way around, but for now I'm just cutting through it. It's being removed in areas where I find old staples and I pull them out. And here comes the first slightly annoying surprise. The drawing is mounted around the glass. This isn't an uncommon method of mounting paper items, but I would prefer not to remount it in the same way after the conservation is complete. When the artwork is placed with the image facing the glass, there's a risk it might stick to it, which could cause damage when trying to remove it. There's an extra piece of paper behind the artwork that can easily be removed. It has a very dark tint, which suggests it contains a significant amount of acid. Acid is naturally produced in some kinds of paper as part of the degradation process, and it can migrate from the acidic paper to the artwork when stored close together. Since there are no markings or special features on this backing paper, I won't reuse it. Now, for the first time, it's possible to really inspect the damage on the drawing. And here comes the second surprise. Tape. If there's one message I would like to pass on today, it's to never put pressure-sensitive tape directly on your artworks. In addition to the tape repair, there's also a long tear along one of the creases, but luckily the drawing isn't stuck to the glass, and it can be lifted off fairly easily. However, as I try to remove the glass, some small tears appear along the edges of the drawing, and this indicates that the paper is quite deteriorated. Once the glass is removed, you can suddenly see how beautiful the drawing of the boy and the red chalk color really are. Now he just needs to be patched up again. I brush dirt out of the creases, but I don't brush directly over the drawing. As the drawing is done with chalk or some form of pastel, brushing over it means running the risk of ruining the image, and I don't want to do that. I clean the drawing with a smoke sponge as well, but the smoke sponge can also remove the artwork, so I'm very careful to only use it in areas where there's no image. With brushes and the smoke sponge, I can only remove dirt from the surface though. I could potentially remove some of the acidic degradation products from the paper structure if I decided to wet clean the object, but I'm not doing that today, as it would also mean damaging the drawing, which, again, I want to avoid at all costs. I would rather have an acidic drawing on slightly darkened paper than a lighter sheet of paper with less acid and a red blot where there used to be a beautiful drawing. There's no image on the back, so here I can brush away the dirt and also go over the surface with the smoke sponge without ruining it. This is one of the classic examples of deteriorated tape. The support layer can be lifted and no longer provides any support, while the adhesive has crystallized. The attempt to repair the tear in the image was surely well-intentioned, but as part of the degradation process, the deteriorated adhesive has formed crosslinks, which means it has become very hard. There aren't many non-toxic methods to remove it other than carefully using a scalpel. I could potentially remove all the adhesive this way, but at some point it would also mean removing parts of the paper, which I don't want to do. So I would rather stop a little earlier and leave a small amount of the adhesive behind. For repairs on the folded parts of the paper, I need some support on the backside, so I insert a small piece of cardboard wrapped in a piece of non-woven polyester. To mend the tears, I use Japanese koso paper and a very dry wheat starch paste. Once the patch is applied, I place a piece of non-woven polyester, a piece of blotter paper, a piece of cardboard and some weight on top, and then leave it to dry. The blotter paper absorbs the moisture from the patch. The polyester ensures that the adhesive doesn't stick the blotter paper to the object, and the cardboard and weight ensures that the damp area doesn't deform as it dries. I had originally planned to repair the long tear from the back of the object, so I could see what I was doing while working. But I struggled to get the support material to stay in place, so after applying a few patches to hold the material together, I changed my strategy and flipped the object over. By placing the adhesive-coated patch on a piece of non-woven polyester, I can slide it halfway under the object, fold the other half up along the edge, and then let it dry like with the other tears. I used dry wheat starch paste because the object hasn't been wet cleaned. During wet cleaning, the colored water-soluble products in the paper structure would have been washed out, but since that hasn't happened, they could be affected if I introduce moisture in some way, including in the adhesive, and there's a significant risk that it would cause staining around the areas that become damp. For the tear in the image, I start with one small patch, which I move on a piece of polyester and slide under the tear from the front. Once it's dry, I check the tear is properly aligned, and then I can flip the object over and do the last part of the repair. On an artwork, patches should only be placed on the back of the object, but with tears, the paper is almost always slightly split. If the alignment is done correctly, the tear can become almost invisible, but it's difficult to keep an eye on the alignment while mending the tear from the back. Finally, the excess koso paper is trimmed along the edges, of course without cutting into the object. There's a small amount of material missing in the upper part of the tear, so even though it's patched, there's still a notch in the paper, and no matter how well I can retouch it, it will always cast a shadow. To fill the tear, I use a small amount of Japanese koso paper in wheat starch paste. I soften a few pieces of the paper in the paste so I can pull out tiny fiber clumps, which I place into the tear and let dry. The tear could be due to some of the paper shrinking at some point, and it might be possible to straighten it out again if the paper is rehumidified. But chalk drawings and water, well, you know the drill by now. Once the tear is filled, I have a surface to retouch on. The retouching is first done with colored pencils, followed by pastel, which I blend on a sheet of paper next to me and apply with a cotton swab. It's difficult to match the color perfectly for retouching, and you'll notice that I work back and forth a bit, alternately adding and removing color until I achieve a result I like. I don't have studio lighting, so instead I work from different positions and at different times of the day, allowing me to see the retouching in various types of light. This lets me revisit the work multiple times until I'm satisfied with the result. Before the drawing can be remounted, I removed the old tape and cleaned the frame. The glass also needs to be cleaned, and once it's in place, I spend a lot of time removing any small dust particles on the inside of the glass so they don't get trapped in the frame and distract from the appearance of the drawing. Originally, the drawing was mounted around the glass, but I don't want to do that as I don't want the artwork pressed up against the glass again. I've cut a spacer from acid-free cardboard, which can be placed in the crease along the edge, so that the folded edge wraps around the cardboard instead. I've also cut a new backing from acid-free cardboard, as the old one contained acid and would be harmful to the object. At first, I made it a little too big, so I need to trim it down, but better that than making it too small. I insert a few tabs to hold the object in place so I can turn the frame over and check if I'm satisfied. And I'm not. The spacer is slightly too large, so it causes a bit of a bulge. I remove it and trim it down. I also check the glass for dust again before trying to mount the object once more. I check again to see if it looks nice this time, and I think it does, so I add more tabs to secure it properly. Finally, the frame is sealed with tape. But, Leah, didn't you say earlier that you should never use tape on your objects? Yes, that's right. You should never use pressure-sensitive tape. That's the kind that sticks immediately, directly on the object. The tape I'm using has a starch adhesive that's activated with water, and I only apply it to the frame and the backing board, and not to the object. The tape is actually important because it prevents dust, dirt, and insects from getting inside the frame. And here he is. It's never easy to know exactly what an object has endured before it reaches the studio. Each one carries its own silent history of wear and damage. All we can do is approach it with patience, care, and respect, doing our best to help it recover and regain its former beauty. This little guy has undoubtedly been through some tough times, but with meticulous work and a lot of love, he has revealed himself to be something truly special. It's been a journey of uncovering layers, mending delicate areas, and making sure that every step taken preserves not only the integrity of the artwork, but also the story it holds. From the dusty, damaged surface to the carefully restored piece now safely mounted, the drawing has shown that even the most forgotten treasures can shine again. Now he stands as a reminder of how important it is to preserve the past and protect it for the future.